then we'll start into talking about the argument notes you took. So on Canvas, I would love for you to upload a picture of yourself without a mask so that I can like sort of get to know you as I'm grading stuff and be like, oh, okay, that's this person, right? Because this is a weird setup and I'm not going to get to know you as well as I like. So anything we can do to help with that would be great. So you can pull out your Chromebooks. You're pretty much going to need them all, period. And we can look at how to upload a picture. So on your Canvas account, there's like a little thumbnail that says account in the side. You can click on that, and I think you just click on this picture here, or maybe it's in settings. Okay, and then you can click on the picture. So you push settings first, and then the picture, and then you just upload a picture of yourself. It'd be lovely if you didn't pick one from when you were like 2. Some people like to do that, and that's still difficult for me to figure out who you are. If your parents aren't comfortable with you putting a picture on, obviously don't, but like, if they're fine with it, if you would just put like a recent picture with you without your mask, that would really help me to associate the work with the name online, so I'm not gonna get as much interaction with you in person.
How do you do it again?
So if you go on Canvas, and there's like this, there's always this menu kind of different icons on the side. You're gonna pick the one up in the top, then you're gonna click settings, and it's gonna pull up this, and if you don't have a picture, it should be like a blank picture, and you just click on it, it'll have an edit button, and then you can upload it.
I don't do anything when I touch it.
That, it looks like yours is frozen. Not 1,000% sure why. Okay, yeah, so then you just push settings there. Yours is frozen. Cool. Any other questions on that? Okay. The other thing I want to talk to you about is how to view all the feedback that I'm giving you on Canvas. I will probably not give feedback on like littler assignments that are like the notes you took on the purpose and parts of argument, because that's just more for you to work through the information. But especially on your writing, I'll try to leave more detailed feedback. So I graded all of like the lady or tiger paragraphs that were turned in before like 8 a.m. today. So if you didn't do that, you need to do that ASAP, right? Because you're falling behind. You don't want that. So you'll want to make sure you do that on Canvas and upload it. But I think no one ever like walks people through how to actually look at the feedback, so I want to do that. We have a boring 3-minute video that we're gonna watch to help you do that. So the way you can find it in case you forget how to do the feedback and want to look it up later. Hello. Sit wherever. So on the week 2 module, yeah.
Canvas is blocked in my Chromebook.
That is probably a tech issue, so you have to go to a tech after.
Sign out and then.
Because I don't know, I'm not at that problem. So on the week 2, again, I have that weekly overview. You'll click on it, and it details all of the assignments for this week, and it also has the video for how to look at feedback. And you can kind of
In
walk
this
through
video,
on your own
we will
Canvas,
review how
sorry,
students
your own Canvas account how to do this, and you can kind of walk through the steps as we go along. The only thing that is different is that this university that like made this video, they have turnitin.com. We don't yet. I would really like it, but I don't know if they're gonna get it for us. You can ignore the part about turnitin.com. The video? That's done. Well, I don't know. I might have to figure out a way to rip it from the YouTube.
for assignment submission feedback, including comments and annotations made by the instructor. To begin, log in Canvas and navigate to your course. In course navigation, click the grades link. Find the assignment that you want to view feedback about and click the assignment name. The submission details page includes the basic of the assignment, including assignment name and submission date. The submission window displays the actual submission. However, if you submitted the assignment file upload, the file will appear as attachment. If the assignment used Turnitin, you will see your Turnitin originality score.
We don't have that, so that one.
If you click on the Turnitin score, you can see additional details and instructor comments. You can preview your submission by clicking the Preview or View Feedback button. If a grade has been assigned, at the top of the sidebar you can view the grade. If your assignment was graded using a rubric, you can view the rubric and see what scores you received for each criterion. To view the rubric, click the Show Rubric link. Any instructor comments added to your submission, as well as any comments added by you, appear in the comments portion of the sidebar. If you see the View Feedback link, you may have additional annotated comments for your submission. Click on View Feedback. You will see a preview of your submission along with annotated comments from your instructor. To download your submission with annotated comments, click on the Download button in the toolbar. When you're done viewing your submission, click on the Close button.
Okay.
For technical support
And then
or
that's for that particular university. So, on yours, again, if you were looking for feedback on something that I graded, you would go over here to the grades button, which is, I guess, right here. So you click on it, oh wait, go back, don't show it on it. Sorry, I have to put it on student view first. Okay, sorry, so you go to grades. And then it will have like your assignments that you've turned in right here. Yours, if it's scored, it will have a score out of bank. And if I have given annotated feedback, so that means I look on your draft and I like highlight something and say something about that like on the paper, it will say view feedback here and you can click it and it will show you like the comments and where they are in the paper. I will use that more for your essays because they're a longer work, and so sometimes I'm like, okay, this sentence needs a little work, or here, right here, you need to incorporate your quotes better, so that way you can see where on your paper I'm talking about. For your Lady and the Tiger paragraphs, I just made general comments, so it'll be on this side, and it will just have like my general comments about your paragraph. They're kind of short, but they just talk about like, okay, here's what you did well, here's some things that you can improve. And then there should be a rubric like score, so everyone got 12 out of 12 just for doing it. But then it will also have the rubric itself, and the rubric I actually graded like where you would be on that rubric if I was giving you like a real grade. So that way you can kind of see, okay, here's like stuff that I need to work on, okay? Questions? Cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk about research questions and thesis statements. What I want you to do is, if you were here last class and had your Chromebook, you started a writer's notebook document that's now in your Google Drive. So I want you to go to your Google Drive and find that writer's notebook for term 1 document. And we're going to add to it. If you weren't here last time, then you'll need to go to the assignments and just find the term 1 choice book assignment, or sorry, the term 1 writer's notebook. And you'll click on that and start it today. If you physically hand wrote notes last time because you just had your binder, you'll just take a picture of that and like upload it as your first entry. Or you could just retype what you wrote if that's easier for you than like finding a picture and putting it on. So for the second entry, you are going to title it number 2, so you'll put like a 2, research questions and thesis statements, and then the date is August 26th. So go ahead and add that underneath what you've already written for number 1. And again, you're not turning these in until the end of the term. So you'll just keep adding to the document.
Document's gonna be huge.
I know, it's crazy. Before we launch into research question, thesis statement. Did you have any questions about the purpose and parts of argument article that you read? Did anyone learn anything new that they thought was good to know about argument? Was it review? Like, maybe a head nod? Yeah? You guys have heard about thesis statements, using evidence, counterclaims, all of that? Okay, so hopefully you turned in that notes assignment. Again, if you didn't, you need to do that ASAP. Cause I'm gonna start putting in those zeros Friday. Okay, so, these are the things that you're gonna record in your notes. I think the easiest way to put that in your writer's notebook rather than typing it all yourself is just to go back to the module and the weekly overview and copy and paste it in, and then you can just add your notes as we go. So if you go to the week 2 weekly overview, right here it says, in this presentation, you're gonna take notes on the following information. I would just highlight it, copy it, and then paste that into your writer's notebook. And then as we talk about each one of these, underneath it, write the notes. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. So I'll give you a minute to put those in.
Like in the first thing, or do like all of these? Or do they write it?
I can hear you. What?
Just like the first one, like
The things, you just go to week 2 and go to weekly overview, and then you go down, and they're just the ones that are going to in the whole this week.
and questions on that.
You're right. So it was used on your Google Drive. Did you have this last time?
This is my classroom.
Okay, so you're gonna go to Canvas. Open up this class. I'm not seeing it. Are you sure you're in this class?
I'm not sure. I already went to the office.
Do you have your schedule?
I went to the office. I went to the office.
Well, I just need to know if you're in this. What's your name? Okay, so we'll figure that out in a sec. Or you can,
Should I just look?
so what does it say that your English class is on Canvas? You might, yeah, look up your schedule.
There are 2 modules.
Because I don't see your class on here at all. So maybe either go to the office or find a way to look at your schedule, make sure you're being here, and then are correct.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. So when we write our essays, we start to write them often. We feel like SpongeBob here.
Okay, Mr. Essay, I say, prepare to be written. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Yeah! Yeah! Some of these, and some of these. Done. Now let's see how it looks so far. Time.
Okay. So we'll start writing, and it takes us forever, and we rework that first sentence like 1,000 times, right? And often that comes because we haven't really thought about where our essay is going yet. We haven't done the research behind it. We haven't given ourselves an outline. And so today I want to talk about some tools that are going to help you to not end up like our dear SpongeBob with a beautifully written word. Right? So, first thing, this is the first thing I notice, the definition of research question is a question used to center your research. Has anyone ever come up with a research question before? All right, cool. So, this is a lot of information. I would only write down what you need to write down to remember. So if you were like, okay, clear, makes sense to me, you don't need to write down all the other information that goes with it, okay? These notes are just to help guide you as you are at home and thinking about your research question, okay? And in college, same thing, when you're writing notes, you do not need to write everything that is on your professor's slide. You're trying to find the information that may show up on a test or that you need to remember, right? Those notes are for you. So, a research question should be 5 things. the first thing we want is for it to be clear. You want to provide enough specifics that your audience understands what the crap you're going to be talking about, right? So clear enough that your reader reads it and they understand where your paper would be going if you were writing a paper about that question, okay? It needs to be focused. So oftentimes I see questions like the effects, what are the effects of depression? Or like, how does depression affect teenagers, right? That's very broad. You could write a whole book on how depression, sorry, I cannot talk today. I feel like this mask is like all up in my business. So I apologize and I'm very inarticulate today. But if you have a research question like how does depression affect teenagers, you can write a whole book on that. So you want to find stuff, like you want to narrow it down so that you are able to answer it in like a 3 to 4 page essay, which is what we're going to be working on for this class. It needs to be concise. So a lot of us, because we're good at English and we like reading and we like writing, use a lot of words to say stuff. We just get like really excited. You want to make sure that you are not using like all the words, but that it's as concise as it can be. Because the more concise it is and the fewer words you can use to say the same thing, the easier it is for you to then find an answer to that question and for people to understand where you're going. And then you want to make sure it's complex, so you don't want it to be answerable with a simple yes or no. So you wouldn't say something like, does Instagram cause depression? That's a yes or no answer. You'd want to finesse that a little bit, like, how does Instagram affect the social health of teenagers, and what should we do to combat any ill effects or something? And then it needs to be arguable. A lot of times, especially with my freshmen, they're afraid of being wrong. But the whole point in writing an argumentative essay is people have multiple views on something. We talked about that last time when we were thinking about arguments. And there's a good chance that like other people are going to disagree with you, because we all have our different experiences and ways of approaching things. But you're going to present what you think is the best solution and then support that, right? And so an essay is like a conversation that you're having where you're laying out why you believe what you believe, okay? Any questions on these? Awesome. Okay, so some examples. You do not need to write down these examples. If you want to look them up again, they're on the PowerPoint, which is available on Canvas. So an unfocused research question might read, what is the effect of the environment from global warming? What makes this unfocused? Yes?
It's very broad.
Yeah. How long would it take you to answer that?
Entire thought.
Yeah, right. What are some things we could do to narrow it down? Yes?
Try to focus on like something that affects the environment.
Okay, good. So like being like, what's one effect of global warming on the environment? And focus it that way. Yes?
Or you could do the opposite and see how global warming affects a certain area.
Okay, yeah, so narrow down that environment, right? We're wanting to narrow down these super broad terms like effect or environment or global warming. So you'll see in the more focused one, they get pretty specific here. What is the most significant effect of glacial melting on the lives of penguins in Antarctica? It's probably not like my jam to write about, but I did look it up, and apparently global warming kills krill, and then there's not enough food, or it creates a lot of puddles, and then they lay eggs in these puddles and they don't hatch. So it's a big deal, guys. So you could pick either of those to say that's the biggest effect. Because then when you write your thesis, you would be taking a stance on what has the greatest impact. And so by saying, oh, the krill depletion is the greatest effect, someone could argue like, actually, it's the puddle nest situation that is the greatest, right? So it gives you a lot more to focus yourself on, and you can write a much shorter paper rather than a huge book. Okay, this one is too simple. How are doctors addressing diabetes in the U.S.? Why does this one need work? Let's see. Yes?
Because it's like, he's asking for a fact,
too much.
Yeah. When you present the answer to this, is it gonna be arguable? No, because you're like, no, these are literally the effects, like here's a list, right? So to make it complex, this person, again, went kind of all out, right? But they say, what main environmental, behavioral, and genetic factors predict whether Americans will develop diabetes? And how can these commonalities be used to aid the medical community in prevention of the disease? There's a lot more specific and complex, because you're kind of having to do two things. You're having to look at, okay, what are these main factors, and then how can we use them, right? And that's a much more interesting paper and a longer paper. So a good rule of thumb is that if a quick Google search can answer your research question, it's likely not that great of a question. You need to bulk it up a little bit, okay? Last example. How should social networking sites address the harm they cause? Why is this not a research question? Doesn't make sense, right? It's unclear. What could I clarify? What could I change to make this more clear? Let's ask someone in this little area. What is your name?
Okay.
Michaela. What is something I have to do to make this more clear?
Say specifically what the harm is that
Okay.
you're talking about.
Yeah, that is great. So I could be like, this particular harmful effect. So like, depression would be one. I don't know. I guess I'm on a depression kick. Not really like I'm not depressed, but like, that's all that comes to my mind right now. Right? Depression, or like, it's so, like, stunts you socially, or whatever. Okay? So that you could specify the harm. What else could I specify? Yes?
Like what network site, like what social networking sites
Yeah.
are causing the harm?
Good. There's a lot of them, right? We got like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, if any of you even use that anymore, right? This one, I think the person who wrote this is like ancient. He just talks about MySpace, right? But I did use that at one point. So they have specified it, made it clear by saying what action should social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook take to protect users' personal information and privacy. So they've said, okay, here's the harm that is happening, that it's like personal information and privacy is often not protected, and then like what steps should they take? And that's arguable, because people could be like, no, you need to take this step instead. Any questions on what makes like a clear question? Okay, so some steps to developing your own research question then. I think this is on the thing. I would probably just write down like that first statement, but if you need clarifying information, then you can add to your notes, okay? You're gonna choose an interesting general topic. Pick something you care about. Like, I know that like I'm your teacher and I'm forcing you to write this essay because it's part of your grade, but at least pick something you care about, right? Pick something to do with sports, or if you are like super into environmental cleanliness, pick that. If you like shopping, see if you can work that in there, whatever, okay? But try to make it as interesting as you can for yourself. And you wanna just like look at topics, because that will help you generate some questions. So examples of general topics might be slavery in the American South, or films of the 1930s, or social networking sites, or whatever, okay? Those are topics, but they're not yet questions, because they're just like, here's this big subject. Then, you're gonna do some preliminary research on your general topic. So I'm gonna show you a good database to use to do this initial research. So if, let's say you picked that, like films in the 1930s, you can just like put that in and see what information comes from that to kind of help you start thinking about your issue. There's a really good one on the site we're gonna use on the online library that can help you see some pros and cons on some charged issues. So you can kind of see some of the basic arguments that are being made about that issue, and then decide what stance you want to take on it. Step 3, you're gonna consider your audience. In this case, like you're writing for like your school audience, so I'm a part of the audience, your peers. You're gonna wanna write in an academic tone. And like anytime you're writing for school, you're kind of using an academic tone. Let's say you were writing for a blog, you could definitely adopt like a more casual tone. If you're writing to a 5-year-old, that's gonna be a lot different. But, for this paper, you're writing to an academic audience. You wanna approach it in an academic way. Okay. Then you wanna just like start asking questions like, how did they make films in the 1930s? Why did they make films? And then you can kind of build on those until you get the complexity and the clarity and and more specific research questions. So you can just start asking some of those questions and see if they lead to something good. So for example, why were slave narratives effective tools in working towards the abolishment of slavery? So you're asking some of these initial questions, and eventually you'll get one that you're like, okay, that one I could write a whole essay about. So you want to start just asking some questions and pick the one you like the best, right? There could be multiple questions. And then you want to evaluate your question. So, you want to make sure that, okay, is it clear, is it focused, is it complex, those things that we wrote at the beginning, like on those previous slides, right? So you'll just kind of check through, and if it's missing something, then you're going to tweak it a little bit until you have a solid research question. Any questions so far? Okay, and again, all of these slides are available on Canvas, so if you want to relook them up, you can do that. And then begin your research. Yay! You'll start, and that will help you get to your thesis, which is your answer to that research question. So, online library. This is where you're gonna go to do your initial research, and then as you're researching for sources to support your stance on whatever the issue is you're looking at. So our essay that we're gonna be writing, you're gonna be looking at either like an issue or a problem in society, and then taking a stance on either how to solve that or a viewpoint for like how it should be handled. So you're gonna go to the online library. There's kind of, you can either type in the whole address, or if you go back and you see this PowerPoint, you can click just on this slide. But also in the module for this week, there's a paper called usinguen.org. And this will walk you through the steps when you get home and forget how to do this. You won't freak out. So you can just type into your browser, or if you open up this page, you can just click on the link, but it's onlinelibrary.uen.org. So everyone put that in to a browser on your computer, onlinelibrary.uen.org. And it should come up and look like this. Okay. Now, if you're at the school, that will just pop up, and then you can start clicking on buttons. If you're at home, it's gonna make you put in a username and a password because you're no longer on the school server. So those are also available on this handout. You'll click on student login, and then the username is online, all lowercase, and the password is database, all lowercase. That changes every year, but this is the one for this year. Okay, so again, you won't need that if you're doing it at school, but if you're at home, you're gonna need that information. Once you are in, and you're to this, you are gonna, it probably took you to this page first. Like that, right? This is where you are? Okay, you're gonna pick on EBSCO high schools, because we're in high school. And then it will come to this. So these are all a bunch of different databases that you can use to do searches on. When you go to college, one of the things that like threw me for a loop the most is like I had never really worked with databases before, and then all of a sudden my professors were like, so anyway, log into this database, and I was like, all I use is Google. / Google wasn't even that big when I first started, so even that was like, sort of, because I'm ancient, okay? But there's a bunch of really good sites. When you have a topic, but you don't really know what you want to say about that topic, I think that this site, the points of view, is super useful. So if you click on that, it's gonna pop up with a list of a ton of different topics. And you can also just, if you have a specific one in mind, you can just type it into that search thing and it should pop up. But if you don't know what you wanna write about, this is a good place to get ideas too. They've got like coronavirus, Uber and the ride sharing industry, or down here, they've got like abortion issues, AIDS, really positive stuff, right? Earth and the environment, evolution. So you can kind of think through these and find one you like. Once you've got it, you can click on it, and then it will take forever. But it's got like a bunch of just general information on it. So it's got an introduction to the topic. It's got understanding, so it's got some like key vocabulary words that maybe you're not sure what that means. It'll have those defined for you. It's got a history. It's got COVID today, which is ironic because it's like still going on. But if it's like an older issue, it'll be like, okay, this topic in today's world. And then it's got some sources where it's pulled its information from. Also, on this side where it says related items, they've got points. So, like a pro point and then a counterpoint to that. So this one says, reasonable preventative measures are vital to resolving COVID, or disease suppression measures carry high social and economic costs. So like, is it worth it to do what we're doing? Or it's not, and these will have sources showing both like those various sides. So if you click on it, it's got like some talking points. You can also click on some of these sources and it will take you to where they pulled it from originally, and you can read through those articles. Okay, so that is a really good source to get ideas from. Some of the other sources, Explora and Academic Search Premier, those are really good, just kind of overall search engines. So when you click on that, it looks kind of scary and ugly. Like if I see an ugly website, I'm like, oh no, it's scary, but it's not. You can just type in, if you're looking at like vaccines, you could just like type in vaccines and autism. If you have a few things that you're looking at with vaccines and you want to get more specific, you can push advanced search and do vaccines and autism and push search, and you can do that for as many as you want, and then it will look for articles or sources with both of those in it. And pull those. Okay, so once it does that, it'll pull up underneath anything that on the database that meets those search criteria. So you can click on this and it will bring you to just kind of like a general page about the information. Sometimes it'll bring the whole thing up too. But if it just brings up kind of like an abstract and you want to see what's in it, you can also push these buttons that say PDF full text or HTML full text, and that will take you to the whole thing. Once you find one that you like and that you want to use in your paper, you can cite it by pushing this button over here. And this is all detailed on that handout. You'll just push this button. You'll look for the MLA, because that's what we use in English. And you can just copy and paste this either into your works cited or on the worksheet we're going to work on for this week. And then you'll add the date that you looked at it. So I'll show you that in a minute. A few other database things that maybe you'd want to look at. Consumer Health Complete. This is going to be on like health topics. With some of the ones on this side though, they won't have the full text, so that may not be as useful to you, but it might also have things that are not on like the Explora and the Academic Search Premier. The green file is talking about environmental stuff, legal information. You could look at like court cases, science, if you're like searching cloning, anything like science related, those could have some extra stuff too. But for the most part, I think that you'll be successful using either Explora, Academic Search Premier, or starting your research with that points of view one. Any questions on the online library? Okay. Then we're going to talk a little bit about thesis statements, and then I will show you your assignment for it this week. So, once you've got your research question, the next thing you want to do is create a thesis statement. Have you guys written thesis statements before? Okay, good. That means your teachers are doing what they're supposed to down there at the middle school. So I like to think of thesis statements as the heart of your essay, because what does a heart do? Yeah.
Pumps blood to the rest of you.
Yeah, it pumps blood to the rest of your body and also receives that blood from the rest of the body, right? And then reoxygenates it, keeps it circulating, right? So with your thesis statements, it is pumping blood into the rest of your essay, right? So it needs to be connected to everything that's going to go in your essay. So it's very important we have a strong heart or a strong thesis statement, because if this is weak, the whole essay dies because it's not strong enough to support itself, right? So a thesis statement, for the definition, I would just kind of summarize this information. So it's a roadmap for the paper, you could say the heart of the essay. But what it does is it tells the reader what to expect from the rest of the paper. It outlines everything that's going to be in it. It'll be an interpretation of the question of the subject, not the subject itself. So it directly answers the question asked of you, whether that question comes from me as your teacher and I say answer this question, or you come up with your own research question and then you answer that. Your thesis is an answer to that. And it's an argument. So again, it should be something that isn't a yes or no answer, and that you will have people who disagree with you on. Because nobody wants to read an obvious paper. That's very boring. And then it's usually a single sentence at the end of your introductory paragraph. When we actually get down to writing the essay, I'll show you like where it goes in that paragraph. And this will not be the first thing you do when you start out to write a paper. The first thing you're going to do is gather information like we talked about, come up with that research question. So then writing the thesis is a lot easier, and you actually have a stance to take and something important and reasonable to say. Any questions so far? Okay. Again, you do not detect everything that's here. Word. One of them. Okay. So, some things to check for with your thesis. And I would definitely condense this next slide. I would probably just write down the questions unless I need to remember what that question means. So, you want to ask yourself these questions to know if you've got a good thesis. Do I answer the question or the prompt? If you're not, you're going to want to rework that until you have an answer that actually applies to what you're being asked to do. Lots of times I'll have people, like on some of your later essays when we're reading books, I'll have them go completely off prompt, and then I'm like, you didn't answer like what I asked you to answer, so like this essay doesn't work, right? So you want to make sure that you're answering what you're being asked to do, and all parts of that question, right? Have I taken a position that others might challenge or oppose? So again, is it arguable? If it's a yes or no answer, if nobody's going to argue with you, then you should complexify it and make it arguable. So do not ask, what color is grass? That's not going to be a very long essay, and people are pretty much going to say, when you say that your answer is grass is green, no one's going to disagree. They might be like, well, dead grass is brown, but like for the most part, grass is green. Is my thesis statement specific enough? So again, a lot of these questions are the same questions you asked about your research question. So these are just good checks to make sure you're still on the right path. So not like what are the ill effects of Facebook? There's a lot that you could say about that. Instead, focus on one. Does my thesis pass the so what test? If a reader's response is likely to be so what, you need to clarify to forge a relationship to connect to a larger issue. So again, if you're asking or if you're saying like grass is green, people are gonna be like, why do I even care? Like, right? You're gonna want to think about something that's like a larger issue. And if you're pulling stuff from that issue, like point of view database, most of those issues are gonna be linked to greater issues in society, and people won't be asking so what of it. Okay, that's an interesting stand. And then does your essay support your thesis specifically and without wandering? That will be more what you ask yourself as you start writing the essay. You wanna make sure that you keep referring back to that thesis, and by the end, you're still writing about the same thing that you started at the beginning. It's okay to change your thesis in the course of the essay. So if you are writing an essay, and at the end you're like, ooh, my thesis is like a little slightly different, you can go back and change that thesis as long as everything in that essay is working towards proving that thesis. And then does my thesis pass the how and why test? If a reader's first response is how or why, your thesis may be too open-ended. So just making sure that it's complex enough again. Questions on these? Again, all this information is, like this slide is on Canvas. So, some examples of taking your research question and then transforming it into a thesis. The more specific your research question is, the easier your thesis is gonna be, because you're just gonna be filling in blanks, basically. So if my research question was, what is the biggest threat to the health of Americans, and what should health professionals and or individuals do to combat this threat? I might fill in the blanks by saying, okay, what is the biggest threat? Well, obesity is the biggest threat to the health of Americans. And in order to combat this threat, health professionals should offer incentives to patients to maintain a healthy weight because it will encourage healthier habits and lessen the rates of obesity. So I've taken wording directly from that prompt, that research question that I created for myself, and plugged stuff in for my thesis. This is complex because not only am I talking about what I think the biggest threat is, but I'm talking about what we should do to then combat that threat. I am also arguable. There's a few different arguments people can have against it. They could say, obesity is not the biggest threat to the American health, so they could disagree there. Or they could say, this is a terrible way to combat that problem, and then argue with you there. So this is definitely arguable. It's something that I could approach in a paper and talk about why this is a good solution to the problem. Any questions? Okay, another example. Does Instagram have a more positive or negative effect on teenagers? And knowing this, what steps should our society take to either promote or limit teenagers' access to social media? So this is my research question. Then my thesis, again, I would just fill in those blanks. So I would decide Instagram, does it have positive or negative? Okay, I'm gonna say it has a more negative effect than positive on teenagers because blank. And because of this, we should limit teenage consumption of the social media application by doing this. So that would fill in the blanks for that research question. Although I did use because twice in that, so I should change that. But at least this gives me something to work with, okay? Any questions on thesis statement so far? So for the essay that we're working on, you're going to be researching a question about an issue in our society. Usually a problem. Usually issues in societies mark a problem. Then your thesis should be should take a stance on this issue and perhaps offer a solution or a way of dealing with the issue. So that's what the essay is working towards. Okay. So what you're going to do, we'll give you some time to work on it now, / you will work on and finish at home, is if you go to the weekly module, you are going to at home, research question and thesis work page. So if you click on that, or if you go to assignments and click on that, it will pull up a Google Doc that you'll turn in by next week. Oh wait, okay, and then you'll just click on this, it'll pull it into your drive, and you're done, you'll just submit it on Canvas, that Google Doc. Okay, you're gonna fill out these 4, I guess they're like questions or statements, to get ready to write your argumentative essay, okay? You'll need to figure out a research question, do some initial research on the UEN.org, and then create a working thesis. So, my research question is, so you'll put that there, okay? Then you'll write down 2 sites that you used either in your research for that research question or to make your thesis, or that you want to use later in your paper. So you'll go to the UEN, and when you find a site, you will write down and copy and paste in that citation. So again, on that handout that I gave you, right here, it'll walk you through if you forget how to get that citation and copy and paste it to this document. So you would just copy and paste it here and then add the date accessed. So once you've copied and pasted it, you'll just write accessed and then whatever the day is that you do. So today would be like 26th August 2020. And there are pictures and nice things on how to do that. Then you're gonna summarize the source in at least 3 sentences, just so you remember what is on that source. And you're gonna do that twice over 2 different sources. And then once you've got your research question, you've done some research, you're gonna create what's called a working thesis, which means it is subject to change. You may keep it and like it and write your whole paper and not have to change it, but you may change it in the course of your writing, and that's totally fine. Writers do that, that's a normal thing for you to have to tweak it at the end. So just write your thesis right here. And when you're done, you'll submit it back on Canvas. Yeah.
Wait, so our research question can be literally about anything, right?
Yeah, so I would, if you're like struggling on what you wanna do, go to that UEN site and look up like topics, whatever you're interested in, and then you're taking an argumentative stance on that and how to solve that issue. Other questions? Okay, the other thing you're gonna do at home this week is just watch a video that I have recorded. Maybe if it shows up. On the rhetorical triangle. This may be a review for some of you. It might be new for others of you, but you'll just click on this, watch it. You don't need to take notes or anything. We'll talk about it next time, but it's like 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll talk about it more in depth next time / throughout the year. Okay? So those are the 2 things you need to complete this week. Any questions? Cool. All right, so I'll give you the rest of the time to be working on that research page. If you didn't do your work from last week, get that in ASAP, because I'm gonna start putting in zeros for those of you who didn't do them. And your grades will be sad, and your parents will be mad. I would check out books too, but I think that the library thing is still broken. But if it's unbroken by the end of class, I will check out your books, okay? All right, break. You've got about like 13 minutes.